back calls today, but I still managed to get 2 little walks to the beach, which was nice. Squeezing them in between calls, which was just to recalibrate the brain sort of thing, really. But it was nice just to feel a bit of sunshine. Well, summer, let's call it summer because that's what it is, isn't it? We'll class it as summer because it is. Don't know how long. It's still nice everywhere you are, Giovanni?
Yes, it's quite a nice evening, yes. Sun's still out. It's still got a bit cooler than yesterday, but yeah, not too bad.
Right, it's roasting where we are. But I must say, I spoke to people from the Midlands today and it's overcast and London's overcast. So the first time ever, it's not grim up north. So let's put it that way. We'll lock that one in, eh?
Come to Blackpool.
Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, let's dive into the workshop. Chris, you didn't come to this morning's workshop. Are there any questions you'd like to discuss or go through this?
No, I mean, I tried to make a point to be here. I couldn't get on this morning. I was teaching, but I'm still trying to get my head around the whole profit first thing. It's the one thing that I'm still not fully got to grips with. So I always just keep coming back to see if I can, what else I can pick up, really.
Yeah, cool. And I think what I'll do, I think it's nice to sort of take from different angles. So I think I'll do something a bit different as we go through this today, because that'd be quite nice. And then we'll see any questions, especially if there's just be a nice small. If there's small people on, we can just chat away. That's what I think. Well, we can do anyway. If it comes on. So the one thing that I've done a few times, and it might make it easy, and I think we did this with someone on a private coaching call today. We talked about. I'll put it onto this side, which might be easier. So we did total takings was 100%, which was quite simple, and then we had VAT. If depending on what plan you're on, was 20%. Bills, we're going to try and sit at around 20%. Actually, I might just for this, pull that down out of the way. So then we'll go with stock. Hopefully, we're going to put that 15% and we can manipulate that as we talk. Wages, we'll do at 45%. Then we have bills at 20%. And then we have our total. So I think that comes to 45, 55, 65, 70, 80. Bang on 100. So adding the 100% in and the 100% out, we're left with a big fat 0. So what we try and do with the profit now system is we just try and figure out, can we manipulate some of this money so we get to keep some of it? Because at the moment, we have nothing in profit, you know, and we have like nothing put by for tax even, unless we put our little wage through. And some salons would have this, and we've got to go, what can we manipulate and what can't we manipulate? So the one thing we try and realize is that if we separate the bills, because the bills, which is here, if we pull that down below to the bottom, everything that's sort of still left, we can really have a go at if we want to. And everything above the line that we call real income is what we can actually increase takings and alter. But also we can sort of pull our belts in and alter too. But everything above the line is what produces us money. And usually everything below the line is what is the expenditure that spends our money, or we get to control that. So some things we have no choice over. So I believe, for example, the 100%, which is the takings, we don't have any choice with that. It is what it is. If we've got any money coming in the till, it's 100% money. And then we have the VAT, and we did this one without a VAT one in there. So the VAT, I think, usually sits anywhere between, we did one today, it was 11% to about 18%, to be truthful. But we don't really get to mess with that one. So working on these figures today with a VAT-free amount as we work through. So we've excluded the VAT. We have a choice of whether we want to spend that 15% stock. And also the fact is that wages that come in at 45% at the moment. And then for us, when we work this out, I'm going to keep it real big round numbers. And I might just do something like 100K to keep it nice and easy for my maths. If your takings are 100,000, that means your stock is probably going to be at 15%. I mean, keeping it nice and easy, and now I need a calculator. And on quick at maths, 15% of 100 grand, of course, is 15K. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, that's 10%. Oh, come on, Richard. Wake yourself up. So 100,000 times 15%. Yep. I think it is 15,000. Where did I get that from? 100,000 times 15%. 15K. I was right. And then the 45, of course, will be 45,000. And to get the real income, we just deduct these two figures, which we'll color together, from the 100,000. So that's 40, 50, that's 60K. So we're left with 40,000. And we count that 40,000 as real income because without stock, we can't make the money. Without wages, we can't make the money. If we was a supermarket, that would be the price for a tin of beans. That would be the price of the tin of beans that we have to buy before we put markup on it, sort of thing. So for us, it's sort of, that's how much was our real income. Now, when we get to mess with this, for example, we know currently that we're sitting at 15 and 45%. And just like Giovanni this morning, who has a very low stock bill and quite a tight wage bill. So Giovanni shared with us this morning that his stock bill was around 8%. And I think his wage bill was 35%. I'm not too sure. Was I right there, Giovanni?
Yes, I sent you that thing. It worked out at 32.50.
32.
32 and a half, we'll say.
Yeah, so 32. So with Giovanni, for example, and this might be the same with you, Chris, your stock spend, it might be perfect and your wages might be perfect. So that would mean there'd be no changes at all and you would be on 40K. There is nothing you can do about that if you're sitting in a place where you think that's acceptable. Like if your wage bill is 45 and you're happy at 45, 45 it is. If you're spending 10% on stock and you're happy with 10%, so then your real income is 40. And the only way then to increase that would be to increase takings. Nothing else. Nothing else is going to change above the line for you guys if you're happy with that number. Does that make sense at the moment, Chris? Is that where you think you're at? Or do you think yours are out?
Oh, no, mine are really different to that. My numbers are different to that. Yeah. But I understand the math behind it.
Yeah, okay. And do you feel where you're sitting at the moment, you're happy with that?
No, not really. Mainly because of my wage percentage is always going to hamstring me, I think.
Yeah. And you might figure out like some people, like let's say in the States, for example, there's not many salons can get below 50% wages, no matter what. They just can't, the way the setup is over there. So they cannot manipulate that at all, but they have to then look at other things to see if they can do other things that'll make a difference. So Giovanni, for example, he can't do a great deal to alter his real income unless he increases takings. So theoretically, he might say, which he might be, I'm working on a 15% growth this year, which will take me to 115K. And that means over on this side here, if I'm really lucky, I'll end up with 55K as my real income if I can still keep the stock and the wages the same. But he might increase this by 8% of the 115K that he's got. So it might lower it a little bit, but not much. So above the line, the math makes it work out. Then we ignore the top completely, and we now just only concentrate on the bottom figures. So we use this real income figure here to work out where we are and where we could be. And this is like the actual is what's happening in the salon. And the profit plus section is what could happen if we did something. It's just like a best guesstimate. That's all it is just guessing. It's like, well, I really would like to increase business by 15%. And if I do that, this is where I'm going to end up. And then you've got two choices. You can either wait until it happens, or you can make it happen. And we'll talk about that in a second, how I did mine. So 50-50K, we'll work that out as, I'm going to take that back to leave that as his guesstimate. And that's roughly where he was at. Profit, let's say he had nothing in the profit because there wasn't any. Owner's wage, he paid himself, let's say nothing is the owner's wage. Tax-wise, he paid himself nothing in the tax. and his expenses on here was, let's say he had, let's say he cost him 20% of the 100K. So 20 grand was his wages. And then he was just paid himself 20,000 out of that, which the tax man or the accountant would call profit. So let's say that's what most people do. They don't have a profit account. They don't have a tax account. They pay themselves 20 grand. They go to the accountant and he says, well, you've got to pay a third in tax. So 7,000 goes to the tax man and 14,000 goes to you, theoretically. That everyone make sense, Chris, on that bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the reality. All we're doing is sort of putting an extra step in there and go, well, if we do have the 55, we've now got 15,000 more. Or if we didn't have the 55, and I'll do both actually, I'll do the 55 first and I'll revert back to say, let's pretend he's got nothing has changed. And what we want to do is start putting the percentages in here as best we possibly can. I'm trying to realize where I've got one now with some figures already in. There we go. Let's do 10, 35, 25. So it's 10%. Tax was 25%, 35%, and that should give us 30%. I think it is. 30? My math is correct. 30%, yeah. So this section here equals 100% of the real income. The bottom below adds up to 100%. So all we're doing is the money above. Let's go back to this figure here. So the money above here, this 40K, has worked out from 100%. We deducted some of the bills and we're left with the 40. And now we've got the 40. We're going to disperse it into different percentages, but it's still going to equal 100% of that 100% of that 40K. So working on just two for now, let's say in the middle, we've got a stage where Giovanni says, I'm not taking any more money. I've only got 40K. Let's see what difference you can make, Richard. So what we'll say is we would like, it is 10%, yeah. 10% to go into the profit account, which means he'd put 4,000 into a profit account. That is 10% of the 40K. We've now got 35% of that money. So 40,000 times 35% gives us 14,000 goes into the owner's wage. 8,000 goes into the tax account. And then we've got a 30%, 40K times 30%, equals 12,000. So if you added up all, let's keep there's a light green. If you added all these up, it will come to 40,000. We've just decided to put them into their own little buckets, really. That's all we've decided to do is go, hey, let's instead of putting the money in one bucket and dispersing out, we're going to put it into 4 different ones. And we're going to put it into, 4,000 goes into profit, which is still the same as anything else. The tax goes into 8, the owner's pays 14, and the operating expense is 12. That's how much it should be. So out of the 40K, that's where we should be sitting, ideally, and that should all marry up nicely. Now, if he had 55,000 and he got his 15% increase, he would end up with 5,500 that would go into that bucket. 11,000 would go into that bucket. We have got a 55,000 times 35%. 19,500 goes into that bucket. And then you end up with 55,000 times 30%. 16,500 goes into that bucket. So we go from the estimated amount, and these are 2 amounts. One's real, which is that one, which is on 40,000. And this is what we're hoping for. Now, that means that if that's the case, we're going to go for 115,000 for the year. That's going to be our goal, 15% on that. If it looks like we're hitting them numbers, then we know that the guesstimate down here in red, let's do a nice red one. We know that this is actually going to happen, and we can start upping what we pay ourselves or what we pay into different buckets. What tends to happen, and the reason why this came into its own, was some businesses were increasing their money, their stock went up, their wages went up, and then they spent the whole lot anyway. because it was all in that bill one down here, and they just spent it, and there was no difference. So what we try and achieve here is we try and sort of say, if you do increase your business, we know that if you increase it by these parameters at the top, then the bottom parameters will change, which means you can start popping them in these buckets. Now, at the end of the year, they're all your money anyway. You can do what they like with them. I mean, these three here, your tax, your owner's pay, and your profit is still all yours. But one thing I realized is that when I started growing my business and started making more money, I just spent more. I bought newer cars. I bought stuff. So once you, and I pulled too much out. I paid myself way too much money. You know, I just thought I got loads of money in the bank. I'm going to give myself an increase. And it was just all out of balance. And eventually the operating expense has either too much in and we blow it, or not enough in and we really struggle, which was the day that I was paying myself, you know, well over 3,800 a week and still couldn't afford to pay a tax bill. So that's why we introduced, put them in the buckets, and that way it's not yours. You know, if you want to pay yourself a bonus at the end of the year, pay it out of the profit account if it's still in there. And most people do get this wrong a little bit at the bottom, Chris, because it's now a working out of another number, if that makes sense. You know, we're now only working out of the 55K to figure out where the buckets go. The top of the mechanics to make the money happen. So it's actually two lots of working outs that we can work on as we go through this. And I will look at yours, Giovanni, and get you back tomorrow. I've been busy today, apart from that, 2 walks I had. But apart from that, I have been busy. But yeah, so when you do yours, Chris, if let's say you wanted to suddenly pay yourself, I don't know, £500 more a month or £1,000 more a month, when you do that, you can work out what needs to happen for me to have 12,000 in the profit account. You know, do I need to increase takings above? Do I need to lower the wages above? Do I need to pull my expenses in? Because if your expenses is less than 6,500, you can manipulate these percentages at the bottom any way you like. You might think, well, actually, I'm not going to pay myself 20% tax because I'm nowhere near that. So if I am only 10% tax, I could give it to me. I could put it in the profit account, or I could leave it in the business for advertising and growth. You get them to manipulate the bottom ones as well as manipulating the top. That's the thing for myself and how I work. I'll show you how I work it out. So with my business not being a salon, so I estimate how much I think I'm going to earn every week. So this is how I tend to work. So let's just say I think I'm going to earn 2,000 a week, right? £2,000 a week. So I'm going to pay myself 2,000 a week, and then I'm going to disperse it into like a wage account, a VAT account, a profit account, and my bill account, all percentaged out. And then what I do is then every now and again, which is usually every 13 weeks, I check in and I go, hey, did I earn 2,000 a week in my business? And if I didn't, then I know that my estimation of growth is wrong and I have to put it back. So I make that decision beforehand, going, I'm going to pay myself this, I'm going to make this happen. But maybe that's just the way I work. When I first set this up, we have the bank accounts called wage, called VAT, called profit, and called bills. And I wasn't that great to start with. I didn't have the money. So all I did was set it all up and send over £1 every single week. I put £1 in, knowing full well that I didn't have the money. But then I looked at my bills, and I think I said to someone the other day, you know, I went through with 2 colors and go, okay, this is what I'm going to work on. And I tried to save myself 2 to 3% off my bills. And then when I did that, I upped these with that 2 to 3%. That's how I worked. I never had the money. It was just pounds going in and pounds going in until eventually I just wanted to make it habitual. And like even now I've gone from monthly wages to weekly wages. I literally, out of my bill, it goes in on a Wednesday, it comes out on a Thursday. Like literally, and then it goes back into the bill account for me to pay Wise. It's crazy when you think about it. But if I stop doing that, it's like going to the gym 3 times a week and then not going, and then suddenly you're out of habit, and then you stop going, and then you don't go at all. So I'll just try and keep the habit going. But to start with, I was told, just make the switch, just make the lean by putting the money in. And I realized that for most people that decide to bring this on, if you can imagine that let's go your weekly bills, it might be easier weekly. Your weekly bills, money in, let's say, is 4 grand, and your money out is 3,500. Most people don't have that 3,500, which sounds stupid, doesn't it? Because you got 4,000 going in. So how do you not have it? So because bills are monthly and because you prepay things, what tends to happen is that you pay out more than you're actually putting in. And we're keeping this flywheel going. So because of that reason, I never had all the money in the pots. They're very similar to, we spoke about the lady this morning, never had the money in the pots. So most of us, when the VAT bill comes in, if we haven't got the VAT money, we borrow it from the stock money. And when the stock money is due, we borrow it off the wage money. And we sort of go in like this, but like everyone does the same. So I didn't have enough. So I decided to choose one. It was a bit like that American guy, Dave, what's his name, when he tries to get people out of debt. And it was like, if you've got 3 credit cards, and let's say you've got a big bill and you've got a medium bill and you've got a small bill, you pay the min off that, and you pay as much off you can as that. So you pay, let's say you're all off this one. And then the money you're paying off this one then goes to this one, and then you pay as much off that one, and that's how you get out of debt. So it's very similar to this. I just put a pound, and find out, okay, where am I short? I've saved 3%. I've now got 300. I'm going to start putting 300 into my stock or wage account. And then eventually I caught up with myself. And it takes a while to get there, to be truthful, because you always, everyone borrows Peter to pay Paul. But I found that, same as my personal account, when I did this, it did change my world. It sort of stopped me realizing that the money's not mine. And like the realization of this workings out, which we talked about, like Chris says, you now know you say that your wage is higher than you would like. Because I mean, we're all in different worlds. So we've got people, for example, like I think like Susie, who doesn't work the floor anymore, and she's happy if her wage was 50%. Because I don't work it, I've got a manager in place, I'm very happy with that. So she doesn't want 30%. If she worked it, she would want to get it down, but she's happy with that sort of, and as long as you're happy with that, then that's fine. You've got to figure out, well, if you want more money, where's it got to come from? Do we increase taking so, the wages go down and then the real income goes up, and then we can fill the pots more? So that to me is the key when you want more money, is where is that money going to come from in the pot? We can, of course, look at bills and go, okay, I'm going to move, FPOS machines, or I want to move bank accounts, or a lot of the banks, you don't save a great deal, 1 or 2%. There's not a lot with the bills in general. You like a lot of the rent you can't move and things like that. But the stock and your wages are so big that if you can skim off 1%, it's a lot. If you skim off 5%, it's a lot. Big money that then falls down. We talked about today with the person we talked about this morning had was spending sort of 25% on stock, and even if they save that 10%, it was 20-odd thousand a year. And it's just trying to pull that belt in a little bit and being in control, and it's so easy not to, So that's how I worked that out. It is confusing to start with, and then the key to this, I suppose, is what's it all about? Is what do we do with the knowledge that's now given us? We've now have this knowledge of, I want to pay myself more money, and if Richard's correct with the pots, I'm either going to keep all the profit to myself, and I'm going to be greedy, or I can keep half to myself and give half to my team if I wanted to, or I can increase my real income and figure out, how do I do that? Well, I can lower these two only, because that's all we can control, or we can increase the takings to manipulate the math that's behind all that. And I guess once we have this knowledge, it's then what you do with it next that matters. That's the key. And there's no right and wrong, and there's no, it should be this and it should be that, because we're all different. I was speaking to someone today on a coaching call, and his operating expense at times is up to 70%. Huge amount, right? Massive. And they're going, but I'm spending loads on marketing because I really want to grow this business fast. And I'm happy not to pay myself any money to make this happen. And it was like, well, how long are you prepared to make this happen for before you get some stability? If you said to me, I'm going to take no money for 3 months, I want a growth, I'm going to blast it out, that's your call. But you've got to realize you're stealing it from yourself. We went through a stage with Daniel at one time that said, hey, Richard, just let you know, my wage bill is going to go through the roof because I'm taking on 3 staff members all at once. And it's going to take me 6 months to train them up. So my wage bill is going to go really high. But after that, I'm going to be okay for the next year. So it's okay manipulating the numbers as long as you know that it's going to have a massive impact down here. And he was happy to lose his profit for 3 months. He went, okay, I'm happy to lose that, run the bottom end quite tight. So it's just the knowing what you're doing with the numbers and what the impact it has on your business and in the pots that are there. That's what we tend to do is look at, once we know this, you know, if you want more money, if you want to put some by for yourself, something, the percentages, I feel, been doing this a long time now, are acceptable. Unless you're in London, you might end up with more than a 30% operating expense. But the balance is how the business really works well. Any questions, anyone? I think we did that okay, hopefully.
So, so the numbers, like the percentages that are in the bottom,
Yep.
profit, owner's wage, tax, operating expenses, etc. They're pretty much arbitrary numbers, but they're based on your experience of what's typical of the salons that you've worked with.
Yes. So when I started doing this, I didn't have a clue what percentage goes in what. So what I decided to do was, the one thing that I was guided was 10% stock is the ideal. You know, if you can save 10% down here, that's ideal. Okay. And they guesstimated that 35% would be what you should pay yourself. That's what someone guesstimated. I thought, okay, that sounds okay. And then they sort of said, well, 25%, 30% tax. And I'm thinking, well, by the time my accountant's done his job, usually 20% is enough for that. You know, most people aren't paying more than 20% tax, even if it's corporation and normal, by the time your accountant's done his bit. Because don't forget, it's only 20% of the bottom, not 20% of the lot. There's still bills in there. And then I worked out that mostly 30% would cover most expenses. And all the people we work on, them figures are correct. But some people who have got in a shopping center salon, they need a lot more money rent than what's at the bottom, to be truthful. You know, in the UK, we found most people are paying 5% rent, and in Oz they're paying about 10% rent. I think I've seen in America most about 5% rent. So depending on how much rent you pay will determine how much you need in the operating expenses. You know, mine was lucky at one time, it was about 17% for all bills. And then sometimes, you know, the landlord got greedy, it crept up, and then we bashed over the rent a little bit and it came back down. So, but the bottom we can manipulate as much as you want. The only thing that I don't agree with, which is what people tended to do, was go, okay, I can't afford to live off that operating expense, so I'm not going to pay myself 35%, so I'm going to put that in there. And then I'm not going to do 10%, I'm going to do 5% and put it in there. And I'm thinking, you're just going to overspend. You're manipulating it to overspend, if that makes sense.
Mm.
You know, you can be lean. So the operating expense, you know, the 30% of that real income is around the figure it could be. But yeah, don't sacrifice, especially the owner's wage, to boost that up so you can go, well, I need the money in there for X, Y, and Z, when you don't really. Because I think most salon owners, I don't know if you'd agree with me, Giovanni or Chris, is that I don't think most of us, and I never did for a long, long time, ever look at me bills.
I agree with you there. I think I've had more of a look this past week. Usually I just take the main figure and I know roughly what I've spent. But this past week, really looking into it, I've certainly realised how much the operating expenses, how much it takes to run the salon, should I say, on the operating expenses.
Yeah. I always used to believe, and I think a lot of people think the same now, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, it just is what it is. But when you look at it, it isn't just what it is at all. We just say that. Like the guy today I was speaking to, he said, well, I have to spend a couple of thousand a month on marketing. Well, do you? Why don't you look for a cheap alternative? You know, you could. We used to look for cheaper ways of doing things. We in hindsight, we would look at cheaper FPOS machines or whatever. And we don't. We just go, well, it costs us that much. It's gone up a percentage. And, you know, like gas, electric, no one really shops around. And sometimes every now and again, we should recalibrate at least once a year. Just have a look at it. You know, just to sit there and go, you know, can we get that down 1 or 2%? And sometimes we can't. I mean, we're not saying we can. Sometimes we can't. You know, to be truthful, as it stands right now, this is what I mean. I'm going to say it out loud, and Julie's going to hear me, and it's not going to be very nice. So, this is what I'm paying for at the moment, right? I'm paying for Apple TV. I'm paying for the BBC TV in Australia. I'm not living there for 10 months this year. I'm not even in the country, right? I've got 2 other ones that are Australian only, Stan. These I can't even watch until I get back into Oz. But I don't cancel them. I just leave them going. I pay for Prime and I pay for Netflix, right? In Oz, I have Netflix for free, which I've never signed up for yet. And I have Prime for free that I've never signed up for yet. I get it one with electricity and one with the telephone. And I just think, well, they're only $9.99, so why should I bother? I don't even watch them. I can't even watch some of these. The BBC one, you know, the British box TV, I can only watch it in Australia because you can't watch it in this country. And I'm just thinking, it's ridiculous. It's about 60 pounds a month I'm paying. I don't even watch any of it. You know? Oh, and Optus Sport, of course, you know, which is Foxtel in Oz, which I don't even watch because I can't even watch it in this country. I can watch it when I go there. It's bonkers. But I will sit there one day and go through my account and go, yeah, I need to cancel these. And to cancel them, I'm excited to watch when I join them when I go back over. Just can't be bothered signing back up. And I think most of us are the same with some things. You know, we just need to realize that it's all our money that's coming in.
Richard, sorry, one question again. On the operating expenses, you take it away from your total takings, don't you?
I take it away from the real income.
Real. Oh, I think I've done it right then. It's okay.
Yeah, the real income. Just that when I worked that on the right hand side when we very first started, you know, the operating when I say it's 16%, it's 16% of the, you know, the real takings at the top, the takings at the top with what the accountant would do. For us, that 30% is only off the smaller amount. We find, and the reason we brought this in was somewhere along the line. I think if we want to reward our team, we can do that with a profit. But it was designed when it came out, especially when I designed it for my salon, was that if I really truthfully wanted more money, I have to work on my stock and wage spend. And I never did. I just always wanted new clients all the time. That's all I kept thinking. And really, I just need, well, I need to make sure we got clients that return. I need to make sure clients rebook because that's what's going to change your wages, you know, is that section there. And knowing full well what the impact was, if that did creep up to, you know, 50,000, well, that's going to take 50,000 off my real income, and that's going to take 5,000 off all me money somewhere, and I've got to work out where. My friend of mine in Oz used to look after McDonald's, and he found out by just looking at the percentage of the spends was how they grow McDonald's. You know, 0.5% off for the chips or 3% increase in chips, and that really made a massive impact. Was looking at the percentages. So I think for us, knowing well what we should pay ourselves, because there's a lot of owners out there that pay themselves not enough, and there's another bunch of people on the opposite side that pay themselves too much and leaves their business a little bit empty when it matters. And I think trying to keep that balance, and it's not easy because, you know, the money, you know, the flywheel's going round all the time. But for me, I just try and make sure the percentages are done, and I live and die by them now. I've got to a stage where my personal is the same. You know, when my money pays me a wage, so for myself, you know, where my business pays me my wage, the first thing I do is I work out my bills, which are never more than 60% of my income, and then I get 40% that's dispersed into accounts of what I want to spend that money on. And it doesn't change. And I find it very hard now to change back. Once it's in an account that's named, I find it very hard to put it back. And that's the same with my tax bill. The joys of when a tax bill comes in and you don't sweat it is, I think, the best thing in the world. I think, knowing full well it's there in the account, is paid for. And if you do this guesstimate, for example, you can almost work out what your tax bill is going to be, I think. I mean, you could work it out if you are taking whatever you got up here and work out 20% of what the real income is. Is that the true example? I think it's pretty close after a while. So that's what I know. I just put 20% of my real income into a bank account. It covers it no matter what I spend or what or not. It just seems to have enough in there. And this year I've overpaid and I get some back, which is great. But that's only because I've done some tax dodging, we'll call it. Tax dodging, put money into my pension. That's not tax dodging, is it? Legitimate tax dodging. Well, we have a thing in Australia, which is, I think it's great. It's opposite here. When we put tax money into our pension, when we put it in, we get taxed on it at 15%. If I keep the money, we get taxed at 30%, right? So it means that I've saved 15% tax, but I can't touch the money till I'm old. But the good thing about our pension is that we pull it out tax-free. You don't pay tax on any pension money, which I think is great, but you pay on the way in. So that was my manipulation this year, was I want my tax bill to come down, so I'm going to put some money into pension, which was my plan at the start of the year. But I'd planned for that here in my accounts. Before I plan all this out for the year, like in July, I sit with my accountant and we plan next year. We work this out between us, and I know what's going in the pots. So I know, that every single end of my tax year needs to have this much money in that pot. And then we can manipulate trying to get something back out of that to give it to me by doing accountancy like you would do it with dividends, wouldn't you? If that makes sense. If he paid you in dividends and not wages, that 8,000, 20% might come down, of course. And that's what his job is. So you get some of that 8,000 back. That's the key to that. This is just your buckets, let's say. Does that help any? Any clearer, Chris, or still not so clear?
It's definitely, it comes clearer every time I see it and every time I watch it. And I just, it goes right back to foundations, doesn't it? About numbers and knowing exactly what they are. And I don't know how I seem to fluctuate so much from time to time. I just have to try and kind of work out a mean average so I know where I am. Yeah. It doesn't seem to matter what we do. Like over the last 3 or 4 years, it doesn't seem to matter what we do. Our turnover has gone up year by year, but I don't know. At the end of the year, we still seem to end up with exactly the same amount left over, which is not an awful lot, really. I mean, everybody gets paid and everybody's happy, but there's never an awful lot left over, and it's pretty much the same every year.
Yeah, I think this is what I think would happen. I think you could change that with very much ease by literally, if you open a bank account and you decide to put 10% of what that profit account is into that bank account, and don't touch it, you'll still end up with no money at the end of the year except what's in that bank account.
Yeah.
I think once you pay it in and it's gone out of sight, I think you won't miss that. I think the rest still balances out. You might have to take an extra 300 a week to balance the books, and you usually do, but that stays in there. And that's what changed for me was the fact is that I didn't realize that when I took some money out, how did I not notice? How did it not make an impact on my business? Well, it didn't, because it just didn't. Because we just do enough. We always seem to do enough, and it always ends up with, like most businesses that we have, they usually end up in their profit account, to be truthful, with the same amount almost year after year. Like what you said there was almost no matter how much we increase by, we seem to spend by the same amount,
Yeah.
Well, you got to take it out somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's probably actually quite a good idea, because it doesn't matter what I do. Like I say, we're kind of on target to hit like 275, I think, this year or something, which is a bit higher than last year.
Yeah.
But every single month, we still have this 15K that rolls over every single month. Do you know what I mean? It never kind of grows. It just keeps rolling over. Right up to the end of month 12, this 15K just keeps rolling over.
Well, I think you could easily put 200 a week away in an account and you wouldn't even miss it.
Yeah.
End of the year, you got 10 grand in there.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd miss 200 a week if you put it in there.
Yeah.
I think you'd still be saying, where did that 10 grand come from? How did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
I-
Yeah. I see what you mean.
You know, because I think for a salon, even like your caliber, 200 a week is easy to do. You know, and some people make it happen. I don't know why that happens. It just makes it happen, and you don't miss it or you don't spend it or whatever it may be, and you still put it away. At the end, you still have that 15 grand doing its thing, and you go, well, I've got 10 grand now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and do what the hell you
Yeah.
like with it after that. But
Yeah.
I think that's the key for us is making that commitment into that profit account. You know, when you work it down, and it may be 200 a week, but it adds up. It could be 400 a week, and you've now got 20 grand in there. So that's what I find really very, very easy when I put money away. If I don't put it away, I seem to spend what I make, apart from the little bit left over, always the same, you know, like every salon owner, to be truthful.
Yeah.
But it being committed to put that away means that you then, I don't know if you naturally get tighter with your bill money, or it feels a bit tighter, so you stop spending a little bit when you don't need to. It just seems to balance, but that money can put away, and yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, you need to make the effort. They say put in a bank account that's not near your business one as well. You know, do a transfer into an account. I have a bank account that I transfer money into that I never look in it, never looking at it at all. And I haven't got a card, so it just goes in. Then at the end of the year, I go, oh, yeah, look, what I've made some money, haven't I? Because I just don't know it's there. Just do the transaction and that's it.
And that's just a private personal account, not necessarily a business account or anything.
Yeah, it makes no difference because ideally you're going to pay it yourself, I imagine. The transaction has to happen electronically, and then if you need it, like you just put it all back. It's quite simple, really.
So how does that 10K not get counted at your end of year tax audit then, that you've paid yourself £200 a week for the last 12 months?
Yeah. So what would happen is as you do your audit, that 10 grand is still an income that they class. And you only pay profit, not what's in your bank account. You pay profit on income minus all bills. You're paying that money. That 10 grand will still be taxed.
Yeah. So that's still counted as your taxable income, whatever. Then, isn't it?
Whatever. Unless you put it back in the business and left it in the business, then it will still get taxed at business money. But whatever happens, because I didn't realize, I just thought, you know, like Julie never pays herself hardly any money, and then she's got loads of money in the business account. I went, you know, every year you're paying tax on that, like it's been taxed. You know, once it's been taxed, you can spend it if you want to, because it has. So that 10 grand will always be taxed because they know it's coming in, and it's just not in your business account, but it's still classed as business money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it just stops. It just stops us spending it. It makes us feel like, you know, and 200 a week for a salon isn't a lot, to be truthful. You know, but 10 grand at the end of the year is a nice little bonus that's worth the effort. It can go in your pension if you need to, or whatever you want to do with it. But you know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll try that.
And worst case scenario, you got to put it back. You put it back. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's still there. You just don't need to spend it. But yeah, that's what I find works very well for me when it's out of sight. At the end of the year, you know, the accountant knows the money's come in because all my money goes into one pot, and then disperse after that, and then it makes a difference where it is. You know.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Awesome. Any questions, Giovanni?
Not till tomorrow morning.
Okay, not a problem. Tomorrow morning's good. That's good. That's good. And Elaine and Michelle are in the background watching quietly through there. But no, I think it's Joe, it's always good to revisit the profit now, because even when you've done it before, you have to recalibrate another year and time to look at it again. It makes you look at your figures I think in a simple way, but maybe it's not that simple. Sometimes it's quite complex, but I've done it so many times now, I can almost do it with my eyes closed. And I've been doing it myself for a long time with my own business. So, you know, it's quite strange really when you work out. But I think what I do is take the year amount, and then I turn it into a week amount, and then I work out all the weekly versions of this and then disperse it. That works out really easy for me. That's what I tend to do. So my income's done on a week, my stock's on a week, my wages are on a week, the real income's on a week, you know, then the profit's weekly. So I know how to disperse it out of the way. If I left it in my bank account, just be spending it willy-nilly, wouldn't I? Like everyone else does. I'm having business lunches in nice hotels. That's what I'd be doing, you know. I've been not sitting there looking for the cheapest economy train ticket to London. I'll be getting first class all the way down to London. That's what I'll be doing. It's all in one account. But anyway. Guys, it's been great catching up with you again, which is good. We've got 10 minutes to go. If Elaine and Michelle has no more questions, we shall call it an early night. But if you do,
I'm good.
please
Brilliant.
feel
Thanks,
free.
Richard.
Not a problem, Chris. Always a pleasure to see you, matey.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you.
All right. See you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.